So we did earbuds last week, and let's go back to IEMs this time. We've got another entry into the ever-competitive budget segment, home to many lucrative offerings from the powerful sounding CCA-CRA to the ever-appealing Moondrop Chew with its brighter signature and the inclusion of spring tips, making it a great value. So, amidst this busy space filled with many contenders vying for your cash, what does TANGZU have to bring into this ring? Let's find out in this review of the TANGZU Shimin Lee.
Now, the box for the Shimin Lee is definitely a departure from the more commonly seen designs. We get these, very Eastern-inspired sort of calligraphy and smoky elements that make up the image of a dragon. I mean, it's no anime waifu, but yeah, I can dig it. And to the sides, it's very clean with generally no text, just the TANGZU logo. And in the back, you'll see the specifications as well as some contact info. You know, the usual. Of note here is that the bottom segment of the box kind of bulges out a little bit, and you open this box iPhone box style, which is you leave it so that it drops down. There we go. And inside are the Shimin Lees just nestled in their cardboard insert. So below that layer is going to be two boxes. As you can see, one contains the cable, the other the accessories. So the one that contains the cable, you take it out, it's just the cable in a Ziploc bag. Now to this accessories box, you get basically just this bag of ear tips. Now you're getting the Akustune AET07 and AET08 series of ear tips. So let me see. Let me take it out. Come on. There we go. So with the AET07 series, you're getting it in extra small, medium, and large sizes. Whereas with these HET08s, you're just getting small, medium, and large sizes. I find that the AET07 ones fit very nicely on the Shimin Lee, whilst the AET08, as you can see, has a smaller opening here compared to like this. So it's quite hard to fit on a nozzle, and it doesn't work that well. And I'm pretty sure these aren't genuine Akustune tips, but they feel close enough to the real deal, but you probably won't notice the difference. And hey, legality aside, it's extra value for the consumer, and I'm all for that. And yeah, despite the nice and layered box presentation, the Shimin Lee doesn't have much accessories other than the Akustune ear tips. And there's no pouch. This is a glossy gold metal nugget of an IEM, right? That will most likely scratch a lot. So I don't know why TANGZU wouldn't even give a carrying pouch for it. This was quite a daft sort of missing accessories, I think. I would have tossed these Akustune AET08s and traded them with a basic carrying pouch. And of course, there's also no instruction manuals or any kind of documentation, which it's just an IEM. You know how this works by this point, and we skip them anyways, but still, it makes the packaging look a lot more bare bones than usual for sure. And here's the Shimin Lee. At first, I thought the gold color would be super gaudy and showy, but because it's pretty small, it has that nice balance of standing out, but also not being too much to the point of being just straight up trashy. And this design is, well, I gotta be honest, I've not seen a lot of IEMs in this budget that go for such an ambitious looking shell. Like, look at this. It's got this cool hexagonal pattern on the front, and it gives the Shimin Li a nice bit of surface detail as well as hand feel. And the side that goes into your ears is also very nicely contoured. So you get this very comfortable wearing experience even if the earpieces are heavy, because, well, it is metal after all. Now, what's not metal is this nozzle. It's a gold color, but it seems to be plastic instead of metal. No biggie, but you'll notice the difference in the materials, and it kind of is a bit of a disconnect. I don't know why they wouldn't have just made a shell with a full metal design and then slap this thing on, but sure, okay. Now, there's still some surface imperfections here and there, like the Shimin Li kind of came out a little scratched on the hexagonal bits already, but I'd say you're in for a treat with the Shimin Li's aesthetic. It may look a bit odd and a bit ostentatious on camera, but when you hold it in real life, it really does look great. You just probably have to find a pouch or a case for it from scratching, and a handy handkerchief to wipe off the fingerprints, because oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of fingerprints on this glossy shell. The cable you'll be getting with the TANGZU Shimin Li is also quite good. It's all black, which is a tasteful contrast to the very shiny gold of the Shimin Li itself. The strands itself, they are pretty nice. They're decently thick, they don't tangle much, and they have average microphonics. The wires, when you feel them, it has this sort of rubbery feeling, but it's the good kind of rubbery feeling. It feels like it's a good quality material, albeit a bit plasticky. The Y splitter here, as you can see, is basically a metal tube with silver rims. To be honest, I would have wanted to see the rims be gold to match the color of the gold earpieces, but sure, okay. And this chin slider, I must say, it's a little too tight, and it has the tendency to sort of, just wrap the wires themselves after it. But otherwise, it holds its position well, even if a little too tight. Now, the jack part here, this looks a bit generic, but it's gold-plated and otherwise feels solid. What I'm not so enthused about is this very basic 2-pin looking part. It just looks like some plastic, and the ear molds themselves, they feel a little stiff. Overall, it's a nice cable, considering that it's coming in like a $30 IEM. And whilst I don't like that the accessories are a little sparse for the Shimin Li, I recognize that the extra savings are being used to improve the build of the IEM itself and improve the quality of the cable.
Now, for source matching, I don't find any source to really favor or harm the Shimin Li, so it tends to just play well with anything, really. But I will be using my DX160 with a Cirrus Logic based solution that's sort of an in-between of the brighter LG V20 and the warm-sounding DX150. Now, for ear tips, I'll be using the large size of the Moondrop spring tips, which I find to be the most comfortable on the Shimin Li. It retains, a good amount of bass whilst not masking away the mids. Another good pick would be the AET07 ear tips, the sort of Akusu knockoffs that are found in the box of the Shimin Li. They do reduce the mid presence a bit to my ear, but aside from being a bit stiffer feeling in the ears, if you want the Shimin Li to take on a slightly darker tone, it's quite suitable. And I think with all that out of the way, let's get into the sound of the TANGZU Shimin Li. So with the Shimin Li, you're getting an energetic, slightly V-shaped tuning, though with less mid-range emphasis than would usually be seen in more Harman-inspired offerings. with added peaks that flavor the sound without being too messy or random. Starting with the bass. So the low end of the Shimin Li is a little shy, but can still output a good amount when asked for. It's got this semi-soft bass that's slightly flabby at times, but it hits the deepest registers with relative ease and can rumble, even if it's not so keen to. I hear just a bit more mid-bass emphasis than sub-bass, but they're close enough to each other that I'd say that they can sort of be seen as a bit equal. And this bass implementation, it tends to bleed into the lower mids a bit to give you a bit more sense of impact and musicality. A fair compromise, actually. Not the usual weakness here. It shows in the technical department because this bass just doesn't have much detail. And coupled with the sort of random preference of the driver as to whether it wants to show off the low end or not, it makes for a slightly inconsistent bass presentation. Now on the mid-range is where TANGZU applies their tuning muscles and try and make an interesting sound. Let me just pull up this graph courtesy of Akko Reviews to try and explain to you what's going on here. The lower mid-range is kind of warm, but it tends to be masked by the nearby boosts in the neighborhood regions of the bass and the upper mids. The rise in said upper mids peaking near the 2K and 4K marks, it gives some rap vocals a really upfront presence, with songs from Migos and Tyler the Creator having this sort of extra bite and grunge to the sound. JEM also does quite well with the Shimin Li, from the more grungy types like the recent Egoist releases to the more bubbly future bass tracks. It's thankfully not shouty due to the later dips and valleys at about 6 kHz, which to be honest though, it's a bit too much. It's thankfully not shouty, yeah, but it kind of deafens some instruments and makes a lot of the detailing feel quite masked. This is why, depending on the music that you're gonna be listening to, the Shimin Li can be quite good or just a bit blunted. If your music has a lot of info in the boosted ranges, you get a crisp and energetic presentation. But if inversely, the song has more information in the dips of this tuning, the boosts up to 4K that we said beforehand, it essentially makes the Shimin Li a little honky and hazy. And stuff like, electronic synths, they sort of have this muted presence to them. So the gimmick here can work, and it works quite nicely. However, when it doesn't, you get this very blunted sound that's not really dark, but it's also a little breathy and quote-unquote unclean sounding. This will definitely depend a lot on your library and your listening preferences as to whether or not the mid-range of the Shimin Li will work for you. The treble on the Shimin Li, it's just okay. It's relatively relaxed, though maybe there's a bit of a too steep of a drop off because sometimes I want just a bit more treble energy here, but it's nothing egregious. Thanks to this though, the Shimin Li rarely exhibits sibilance, however the sense of air is kind of being lost here. High-end information is basic, which is as expected of this price range, but it is able to maintain a good amount of clarity in most songs. Though I wouldn't buy the Shimin Li for its treble performance, for sure. Going to the soundstage, the width on the Shimin Li is, I'd say, a little below average. It can sound just a bit slightly too in your head at times. Whilst soundstage height, it's pretty basic. It rarely surfaces, but is enough so as to not be non-existent. Imaging on the Shimin Li is also not that great. Things kind of get spread around randomly, and they also kind of blur into each other. The detail and resolution on the Shimin Li is solid, but it's definitely preferring macro details over micro details. Although it has a good degree of separation at times, but there are also some songs where it just clumps together the musical elements, making it sound a bit muddy and blocky. Again, probably because of the eccentric tuning. Sometimes the spacing between instruments are not so clearly defined. It's not downright bad per se, but it's got a ways to go compared to something like the Moondrop Chew. Speaking of which, although it is 10 to 15 bucks cheaper, I think the Moondrop Chew is close enough in the price segment for me to throw it into comparison with the Shimin Li. Now for the build, I gotta give the win to the Shimin Li with the more sophisticated metal shell and the decent feeling cable, as opposed to the Chew, which, the shell is not bad per se, but it certainly doesn't beat the gold and the really cool hexagon pattern of Shimin Li, and the cable is bad. On the accessories front though, the two kind of trade blows, where the Shimin Li gives you more ear tips, whilst the Chew goes for the more complete package with the inclusion of the spring tips, the ear hooks, and a bad but at least existent carrying pouch, which makes the Chew edge out just a bit. Now on the sound, whilst both are going for different implementations, I think the Shimin Li is in for a bit of a humbling experience when compared with the Chew. The Chew, it may not have the bass quantity, but it's generally less clumpy and inconsistent than the Shimin Li. Mid-range on the Chew, it plays well with most genres, with the weakness of having piercing moments and lighter than would be wanted male vocals. But the thing is, when it hits, with the Shimin Li, your music preference will play a big part in whether or not it will sound better or worse. But the thing is, the ceilings are different, right? When it hits right, the Shimin Li's mid-range is slightly better than the Chew's, but when it doesn't work out, the Shimin Li sounds markedly worse for wear. And the Chew just edges out on some extra points on the imaging, which overall adds up to make it the winner in this comparison. So between the TANGZU Shimin Li and the Tripowin Leia, for the build, again, the Shimin Li totally pulls the win. It's a convincing win. It not only looks better than the Leia, and it doesn't feel like a prototype product. Like, look at this. The Leia just has really rough surfacing, and it really does feel like a prototype. And the cable, of course, again, compared to the Leia's cable, is also an upgrade. Now, both these IEMs are sparse with accessories, giving you pretty much only extra tips. But the Shimin Li pulls a win as well because it has more tip variety with 2 types compared to the one of the Leia. Now on the sound front, now we see a more even playing field. The bass on both sets are equally capable, generally shy, but with decent headroom for EQ and not afraid to show it when the song requests it. The mid-range on both are quite different though. With the Leia, it goes for a more standard approach with the caveat of sounding a bit compressed and shouty in the upper mids, whilst the Shimin Li, it still swings wildly from sounding crisp to sounding veiled and muted, depending on the songs you listen to it on. Highs on both are equally unimpressive, I'd say. Now on the technical front, detail retrieval, soundstage, and imaging on both are quite similar. But I'd say the Leia pulls out small wins with separation. So between the Leia and Shimin Li, it will depend on which tuning approach you prefer, whether it be the safe sort of all-rounder or the more risky and situational pick. Both with 1 or 2 deal breakers that you have to accept, the Shimin Li being sometimes a bit gimmicky, and the Leia with that shoutiness and harshness. And of course the bad build, build. So if it were me, I'd pick the Shimin Lee because it's got the looks and the more solid build to, back it up, as opposed to the Leia's admittedly shoddy construction. And well, as you've seen, I have a lot of Moondrop laces already, so the Shimin Lee was the more interesting choice sound-wise as well. So to wrap it up, has TANGZU been able to make a solid start in the highly competitive Chi-Fi budget segment? Certainly. The Shimin Lee shows other similarly priced competitors that you can do better than plastic builds and prototyping sort of build quality, And it has been able to give even cash-strapped consumers a very photogenic design. The Shimin Lee is also able to present an energetic and crisp tuning with the right songs. However, for the songs that don't work, the Shimin Lee can be quite the blunted and messy sounding set, and its technical performance is also less than optimal. The King in Yellow is indeed mighty, but I posit that the eccentricity of this monarch will also make it more of a footnote in the history of Chi-Fi than it is a landmark. So that wraps up yet another review with me, Lumerion. Yeah, I forgot to shoot the outro video again, but hey, at least I'm here in audio form, right? As usual, I'll leave the links to the music I use in the description, as well as links to my website. There will also be links to my Patreon, where you are able to donate to me if you want to see more of this content. If you want me to have the budget to actually bring in more stuff for review, then this is where you can donate to me. Of course, thank you and shout outs to my tier 2 patrons, which is right now 78 Dragon. As always, tier 2 patrons get access to my video scripts, and the lower tiers get access to behind the scenes footage, extra b-roll, and product photography of these things that I'm bringing in for review if and when they are available. Of course, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of this content. Hit the bell button so that the videos get delivered to your feed. Like the video if you like it. If you have any suggestions, any questions, then feel free to sound it out in the comment section. And otherwise, I thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. This is Marion, signing off.